Patrick Queen can't stop talking about the Ravens. Even after nearly a year away from Baltimore, the former Ravens linebacker keeps stirring things up with the fans and throwing jabs at the team that helped shape his career. And guess what? He just dropped another tease that promises to stir up the rivalry with the Ravens even more. You're probably thinking, what did he say now? And more importantly, why does he keep talking about them? Well, I'm about to tell you everything, and trust me, this story will surprise you, especially when you find out what went down during the Pro Bowl. So stay with me till the end to get the full scoop on Queen's obsession with Baltimore and how it could impact the future of the Steelers-Ravens rivalry. Go Ravens! Patrick Queen spent almost 4 years with the Ravens, but it seems their relationship is far from over. After leaving Baltimore and joining the Steelers, Patrick wasted no time making it clear that he had something to say about his former team. Even with time passing, he constantly throws a jab here and there, claiming the Ravens didn't want him back, as if his departure was a forced decision. It's almost as if he feels the need to remind everyone that it was better for him to move on. But as much as this might sound like revenge or bitterness, it's hard not to notice there's something deeper behind his words. Perhaps it's an attempt to justify his exit, or simply a way to poke at his former teammates. This move to the Steelers, though a big opportunity for his career, seems to have altered his mindset. Before his departure, he wasn't as vocal about the rivalry with the Steelers, but now, on the other side, he appears to enjoy fueling the fire. He positions himself as if he's finally in control, as if the team switch was the answer to the frustrations he left behind. Throughout the season, his comments about the Ravens have become almost a constant, and when he speaks, it's impossible not to notice that he's still keeping a close eye on the franchise that drafted him. What's interesting is that when Patrick was in Baltimore, there wasn't as much open provocation. He was more focused on the game, with the rivalry staying a bit more contained within the field. However, his exit to the Steelers seems to have lit a fire. Now, he feels free to talk about the Ravens without worrying about consequences. In doing so, he shines a spotlight on them, almost as if he's trying to remind everyone that he was part of that story, and now he's in a new chapter, one where he's motivated to prove that his choice was the right one. The obsession with talking about the Ravens, especially after all this time, isn't just beneficial for him. It also fuels the rivalry itself. The Steelers and the Ravens, always having a natural rivalry, now have an extra ingredient: Patrick Queen. His name is tied to this history, and his words only add more spice to the feud. As if the rivalry wasn't intense enough, now he's bringing up emotions and provocations that make every Ravens fan think, is he really that happy in Pittsburgh? This entire tension is bound to make the next matchups between the two teams even more electrifying. During the Pro Bowl, Patrick Queen had a curious and somewhat cheeky moment with Marlon Humphrey, his former Ravens teammate. Marlon, always with his playful personality, asked a simple question, but with a humorous twist. What's the best part of being a Pittsburgh Steeler? Patrick's response came immediately, as if he had been waiting for that moment. Beating you guys? Now, this could be seen as just another jab, but the irony here is that in the previous season, the Ravens came out with 2 wins over the Steelers in 3 head-to-head matchups, plus they advanced further in the playoffs. So, Queen's statement wasn't just bold, it was also a bit inaccurate given how the games had played out. Of course, this back and forth was just friendly banter between 2 former teammates who still seem to respect each other, but it reveals something deeper. Queen, in his new role as a Steeler, is taking every chance he gets to mess with his old team. In Baltimore, he never had the freedom to joke about the rivalry this much. Now, on the other side of the battle, he seems comfortable enough to poke fun at his ex-friend. This not only shows how settled he is in his new role, but also how he wants to keep the Ravens in the spotlight. After all, if he's talking about them, it's because, deep down, he still cares about what happened there. This kind of playful jabbing, even if done with humor, only adds to the tension in the AFC North. With the rivalry between the Steelers and the Ravens already being one of the most heated in the league, Patrick Queen's presence with his little digs just makes the atmosphere even hotter. And contrary to what some might think, this back and forth isn't a negative thing. In fact, it fuels the competitiveness between the two teams, making every matchup even more anticipated. Who doesn't love a good rivalry, especially when the players involved have a shared history? The funny thing is, these jabs will probably continue as long as Patrick is in Pittsburgh. His mission now is to prove that changing teams wasn't just a way out, but a new challenge for his career. But he knows that to do that, he needs to keep poking at the Ravens. After all, they're the team he has to overcome to reach his goal, success. And with that, the rivalry between the two teams is about to reach a new level of intensity. Patrick Queen's departure from the Ravens to the Steelers was, in itself a major turning point in the historical rivalry between the two teams. It's not every day that a talented and promising player switches sides in such a competitive division. Queen's move not only shook up the Ravens' defense, but also added an extra layer to the Ravens-Steelers matchups. Suddenly, the games between the two teams weren't just about defense strength or quarterback skill. They were also about Patrick Queen, a former Raven, now doing everything he can to outdo his old team. The impact of this change became even more obvious in Queen's words. He started making public statements that showed how relieved and motivated he was in Pittsburgh. But what really caught attention was when he began to talk about how his departure felt like a form of personal resurrection. He claimed that the Ravens didn't want him back, which in a way seemed like a cry for freedom. And of course, this didn't go unnoticed by Baltimore's fans, who were torn between sadness over losing a good player and anger over Queen's words. How could he talk like that about the team that drafted him? In his first season with the Steelers, Queen was solid and even earned a spot in the Pro Bowl, replacing none other than the All-Pro Roquan Smith of the Ravens. This made many question. Did Queen really need Smith by his side to shine? After all, his performance in Pittsburgh was good, and he didn't seem to rely on a defensive partner any more than any other player. But despite this solid season, the fact that he always looks back at the Ravens and talks about his departure shows that no matter what he tries to prove to himself, he still sees Baltimore as a point of reference. And of course, the rivalry wasn't just fed by Queen's words, but also by the team's performances. The Steelers and the Ravens continue to face off in a tight division where every win counts. And for Queen, these wins over the Ravens will carry even more weight, as each one will serve as a reminder of why he chose to move on. As the next encounter between the two teams approaches, it's clear that their rivalry has never been more intense. We're past the halfway point of the video, but I noticed you haven't left a like yet. That's super important because it helps YouTube keep recommending my content to you, and I can keep bringing more for you. So go ahead, hit that like button. It's free and really helps out. Thanks. Now, let's keep going. When Patrick Queen was selected by the Ravens in the first round of the 2020 draft, the expectations were sky high. He had all the tools to become an elite linebacker, and the Ravens hoped he would be the new cornerstone of their defense. In his early years, Queen had some ups and downs, but it was clear he was beginning to adjust to the defensive system. His ability to cover running backs and make open field tackles was evident, but something still seemed to be missing. Then, in 2022, the arrival of Roquan Smith changed everything. Smith, with his experience and game awareness, took the Ravens' defense to another level, and Queen, alongside him, began to show a much more consistent performance. The chemistry between the two linebackers was immediate. Queen had his best season in 2023, earning a spot on the second All-Pro team and putting up impressive numbers, including 454 total tackles, 37 tackles for loss, and 13.5 sacks in his 4 years in Baltimore. This evolution in Queen's game was a direct result of Smith's presence next to him, someone who helped cover gaps and brought experience to the field. The partnership between them seemed unbeatable, and many believe Queen reached this level because he had the support of one of the league's best linebackers. With Queen's departure to the Steelers, questions started to arise. Would he be able to maintain this level of play without Smith by his side? Despite a promising start in Pittsburgh, where he recorded 129 tackles in his first season, the doubt still lingers about whether he can continue to evolve without the help of a high-level defensive teammate. Many believe his performance with the Steelers will be a significant test, and his career will be largely defined by his ability to shine on his own. As much as he did well in Pittsburgh, the real challenge now is proving himself as a star without relying on anyone else. Queen's focus now is to show that he can stand out without Smith's help, and his jabs at the Ravens seem like a way of demonstrating that he has nothing more to prove to anyone. By focusing on his journey, he also keeps a strong presence in Pittsburgh, maintaining his role as a key player. However, this quest for independence could be what drives him to continue casting a shadow over the Ravens and their defense. Patrick Queen may have switched teams and is now wearing the Steelers jersey, but his connection with Baltimore remains strong. Even after his departure, he continues to make provocative statements about the Ravens, as if moving to Pittsburgh wasn't enough to sever ties with his past. This obsession with his former team seems like a way to reaffirm his importance and show that even away from Baltimore, he still has something to say about the team that shaped him. Each jab is a reminder that he's keeping an eye on what's happening in Baltimore and that the rivalry with the Ravens won't disappear so easily. It's interesting to see how Queen, now with the Steelers, seems to use his relationship with Baltimore as fuel, rather than leaving the past behind. He continues to stoke the rivalry, almost as if it's a way to ensure his name remains in the spotlight, especially when it comes to the Ravens' performance. He may have become a key player in Pittsburgh, but deep down, he still sees Baltimore as an adversary to be conquered. And this is not just about wins or losses on the field. It's about a mental game he's playing, a game where every word or gesture aimed at the Ravens seems like a way to assert himself. The fact that Quinn continues to mention the Ravens, even after moving on, reveals that he's still seeking recognition. His move to Pittsburgh may have been a professional decision, but he knows that true validation only comes when he can surpass what he left behind. For him, the Ravens represent both a phase of his career and a goal to be achieved. Every victory over them, every taunt he throws, is a way to show that his evolution as a player is also a form of revenge. He needs to prove himself more than ever, in Baltimore, with all its history, is the perfect stage for him to do so. This tension isn't going to fade anytime soon. As the season progresses, the rivalry between the Steelers and the Ravens, with Quinn at the center of it all, is only set to intensify. Quinn's figure, now with a personal mission to prove his worth and continue his legacy, is what will keep this matchup so relevant. He knows that the best way to make his mark in Pittsburgh is to shine against his former team. And with that, the rivalry will grow, bringing even more excitement to the games between the two teams. So, Patrick Quinn has clearly not forgotten about the Ravens, and he's making sure to keep that rivalry alive, even from the Steelers' side. His provocations and statements are proof that leaving the team didn't erase his connection to Baltimore. And with more games ahead, we can expect that the tension will only rise. Do you think he's right to keep messing with the Ravens, or should he let it go and focus on his future with the Steelers? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with everything about this rivalry and much more.